From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good evening. My name is David Mao, and I have the privilege and honor of serving as the Acting Librarian of Congress. Welcome to the closing lecture of the Poet Laureate Consultant in Poetry at the Library of Congress. Yes. In June of last year, the 13th Librarian of Congress, James H. Billington, appointed Juan Felipe Herrera as the 21st Poet Laureate. We are very grateful that Dr. Billington, now the Librarian of Congress Emeritus, and Mrs. Billington are here with us this evening. During Dr. Billington's tenure as Librarian of Congress, he appointed 19 Poets Laureate. So yes, please join me again in thanking him for his steadfast support of not only this program here at the Library of Congress, but also his steadfast support for this art form. At the start of Mr. Herrera's term, he launched La Casa de Colores, and I apologize, I don't speak Spanish. It's an online project that allows everyone the opportunity to contribute to his epic crowdsourced poem, La Familia. Critics have said La Familia spans languages, topics, structures, tones, and is a stream of consciousness that echoes the vast yet connected fears and joys of people in America. And I want to encourage all of you to participate in this. You can still participate. Come to our website, loc.gov, and just simply search for poetry, and then you too can be a part of this epic poem. Now, such an ambitious project is really rare for laureates, as they usually take about 6 months just to figure out what they want to do in the position. But I think it surely came as no surprise to those of you that are familiar with Mr. Herrera's tenure as California State Poet Laureate. But this is really only half of Mr. Herrera's power in the position. The other half comes from his own award-winning work. And now, as Dr. Billington said last year, Mr. Herrera's poems, and I quote, engage in a serious sense of play, in language and in image, that gives them enduring power. I see how they champion voices, traditions, and histories, as well as a cultural perspective, which is a vital part of our larger American identity. Following the announcement of Mr. Herrera's selection, a noted critic wrote in the Los Angeles Review of Books, as a poet who makes impassioned connections from his Chicano subjectivity to his role as citizen of the Americas, to his participation as a global citizen, Herrera has written an exceptional body of work, a true testament to his unwavering convictions and respect for the power of language. He's a consummate artist and activist who will bring a different energy and perspective to his duties as Poet Laureate of the United States. And truly, he has done that over the last year. Thank you. All of this energy was evident in Mr. Herrera's opening reading at the library last September, and I think maybe many of you were here for that. That was an event that the Washington Post said, and I quote, was infused with humility and graciousness. Well, I think tonight's event, titled Pioneers of Flowers and Song, will undoubtedly extend that spirit as our laureate celebrates poets important to his own development and invites two very, very special guests to join him and celebrate the future. And I think you're going to be really surprised and pleased with what he has in store for us this evening. This event is presented in partnership with Split This Rock and serves as the opening event for the Split This Rock Festival. So a special thanks to Split This Rock co-founder and executive director, Sarah Browning, for her help in promoting Juan Felipe Herrera's laureateship. And I might add, thank you very much for also providing for sign language interpretation. It's very important for this program this evening. Now, I want to also take this opportunity to make a very important announcement. This may be Herrera's final event of his term, but it's not his last as Poet Laureate. As Acting Librarian of Congress, I'm very pleased to say that I've renewed Juan Felipe Herrera as the 21st Poet Laureate Consultant in Poetry for a second term. And if you've been amazed with all the work that he's done just in this first term, I can only imagine what he will accomplish in the second year. So stay tuned for things to come. Please join me in welcoming him to our stage.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a great pleasure. Muchas gracias. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, David. Thanks, everyone. What a great joy. What a great joy this is. And I want to thank Dr. James Billington, who gave me a call from the very beginning, and our great staff, Rob Casper and Anya Cratney and Matt Blakely, and the entire Library of Congress. How beautiful it is to be here, how beautiful the Library of Congress is, how fabulous are the materials and archives and manuscripts and the paintings and the prints, and Cervantes' first book, which is around this big. However, you can make it this big once you read it, and much bigger than the world, perhaps. I've met so many good people, the division chiefs, the librarians at large, and coming through the front door and coming up here, and the beautiful receptions that we have, and friends that appear out of nowhere that I love, that have come to be with us, and the great partnerships. It really is about being a community and about being a family with the voices in the library, a family with the librarians, a family with the beautiful staff that put me together. They go, okay, Juan Felipe, where's your head? Put it on. And you got it together, and your feet, where are they? Let's bring over the feet. Okay, put them back together. Okay, stand them upright. Okay, now push them out. Push them out. And so that's what they've been doing today. I really appreciate it. And to be here in Washington, D.C., representing everyone at the Library of Congress, and going to so many places across the nation and meeting children and families that bring their children to see me at the presentations, and they say to their children, they say, this is Juan Felipe Herrera. He's a Poet Laureate of the United States. I want you to say hi, okay? And then we say hi, and just that is what we're all about, right? That's what we're all about. We say hi, and then we can read, and then we can talk about books. But first we have to say hello and meet each other and be together. And then I meet the students that had just graduated, and they're becoming teachers. This was in Nevada, Nevada State College. I'm going to be a teacher. I just got my certificate. I go, great, fabulous. And I'm so excited. I go, excellent. That's what it's all about. So we do that too. And then writers that come and see me at the event after the reading, and they go, oh, I'm a poet. I go, great. And I have some poems. I go, fabulous. And can I show them to you? Okay. and I really say okay. I really do. And we have a little mini workshop. Right there in between everything, there's a mini workshop. And that's beautiful. That's beautiful. We also do little mini workshops as we move along throughout the nation and meeting people. And children that raise their hands and have a question for you, and I go, by all means. And then they have big questions. They have giant questions that fill up the whole space. And I bring them up to the stage, and I go, can you repeat that for the entire audience of 700 people, okay? And then they present their question. And then the rest of the people that come from the city and from beyond, they listen to a new voice asking big questions about literature and how they want to write. And this continues. And I did meet two amazing writers. 11-year-old Sarita Sol Gonzalez, who we're going to present at the end of the program. And I did meet Elena Medina, also, 12 years old. We're going to present at the end of the program. And there are Laureate Chicas. There are Laureate Chicas. And that's kind of a little bit of what's been happening as I travel across the nation. And pure joy, pure joy, pure joy. 750 people, pure joy. They drive for hours to come. And they drive through snow in Milwaukee to be at the reading. And in East LA, they drive from East LA and they come to the LA presentation at Cal State Los Angeles, and on, and on. So it's great. This is a beautiful thing we're all doing together, and what the library is all about. So let's give a beautiful, heartfelt, big applause for everything, for everyone here and beyond. Oh yes. You know, tonight I want to present you with the pioneers of flower and song, pioneers of floricanto, the pioneers of insoxitl inquicatl, which are the Aztec Nahuatl terms for poetry, which translate into flower and song. So we were in Aztec times, and still we have many Nahuatl speakers. We would say, insoxitl inquicatl, and they would say, oh yeah, poetry, poetry. And our pioneers were very interested in poetry. That is, the Latinos and Latinas here in the United States during the last 50 years. Something happened, and we began to think about our ancestors. And my friends and my cadre and those that I grew up with as a poet, and cafes and rallies and in the streets of San Francisco and San Diego and California. And we kind of, poetry was like clay. We found it and we grabbed it. It was reddish, it was hot, and we wanted to shape it. And to do that, many a time, we had to go back to the books and find some of our roots and explore them. And from there gain life and present them to the world. It was a big effort. It was a very ambitious effort, but we didn't think about it like that. I want you to see them this evening. They were my mentors in many ways, and a good number of them have passed away at a young age. And I want to read you some of their work as we move through the story of who they were and what they did, and some of their contributions. Pioneers of flower and song. Insoxitl inquicatl floricanto. Flower and song poetry. And this is Francisco Alarcon's poem, who passed away a couple of months ago, in February. A great poet who took on the task of learning Nahuatl, the language of the Mexica, of the Aztecs. And he writes this poem called In Flower and Song, Insoxitl inquicatl. Every tree, a brother. Every hill, a pyramid, a holy spot. Every valley, a poem. Insoxitl, flower. Inquicatl, song, flower and song. Every cloud, a prayer. Every rain drop, a miracle. Everybody, a seashore, a memory at once lost and found. We all together, fireflies in the night, dreaming up the cosmos. And I think thank you so much for Francisco and his legacy, who worked so hard, was a great teacher, great writer for children, great poet, never thought about being acknowledged, and did some amazing, pioneering, groundbreaking projects that we still need to follow upon. In particular, the translation of Aztec materials and his spreading the word of that beauty and that type of material, and reinterpreting those materials in his own way as well. And perhaps that dreaming up the cosmos required going back to the glyphs and ancient walls buried somewhere in Central America, maybe in El Petén, Guatemala. In this case, dug up by Heather Hurst that I met on the road, who painted these glyphs and went to Guatemala and crawled into a cave that was dark and abandoned and busted. And she was curious. She touched those walls and she scratched that mud and she carved it out. And what did she find? She found these murals that told stories way earlier than the ones that we had known about in Bonampak, in Chiapas. I visited those murals back in 1970. And yet they go further back in time. So these are the dreams. These are the dreams. This is a marriage ceremony. This is the brilliance and bursting rays of corn. And that's what we looked at. That's what my friends looked at. That's what these early poets were interested in the late 60s, early 70s through the 80s, and with Francisco all the way through the 90s to the present. But it wasn't easy because we had this thing called the conquest. We had to deal with that. And it was a complex project. Are we European? Are we Spanish? Are we Indian? Are we Mexican? Are we American? And that's been an ongoing debate. And not a debate, but a soul-searching voyage. A beautiful one also. And perhaps this is one of the texts that was very moving when we began this project in the late 60s. A poem by the Tlamatinime, the elders of the Aztecs. Everything was destroyed. Millions of the peoples had died, the Aztecs, given the encounter with the Spanish, the tragic invasion. And this is recorded by Miguel León Portilla, who was here recently to receive the kind of like a lifetime award, a living legend. And the Tlamatinime, the elder Aztecs already have lost everything. They represent the Mexica, the Aztec nation, destroyed. And they're standing before the friars who represent the new way, the new knowledge. And they say, and now what can we say? What should we direct toward your ears? Are we even something? We're just plain, vulgar people. Through our translator we respond, returning our breath in the word of our Lord of the near and far. For him we risk everything. This is why we're in danger. Perhaps to our perdition, perhaps to our destruction is where we will be taken. But where should we go? We are finite. We are mortals. Let us die in peace. Let us vanish. All of our deities have died. Let your hearts and flesh be calm, dear sirs. We will break a little, bit by bit. We'll open the secret, the ark of our Lord. So spoke the Aztec nobles, teachers that were now captured. You said that we don't know about the Lord of that which is near and far, him who reigns over the heavens and the earth. You said that our goals were not real. A new word. This is for us, that which you speak. Because of it, we are disturbed. Because of it, We are burdened because our ancestors, those who have lived on this earth, never spoke this way. They taught us their way of life. They rendered real tribute to their gods. They taught us all of their traditions and the ways in which they would honor their gods like this before them. We bring the earth to our mouth. We bring the earth. For them we bleed. We made good on our promise, burned the copal incense, and brought our offerings for sacrifice. This was a long time ago. It was there in Tula and Huapalcalco, in the ancient cities. Until now, will we destroy the ancient laws of life? Those of the Chichimecas and the Toltecas, the Alcoluas, the ancient peoples, the Tecpanecas? We know to whom we owe our life, to whom we owe our birth. This is what we respond, what we reply to your breath, to your word, oh dear sirs. So that translation by Miguel. Thank you. That translation by Miguel León Portilla, the great scholar of Nahuatl thought and culture, with his great book, Aztec Thought and Culture, that came out in the 60s, which was the right time for us as young poets and searchers and seekers of our writing and culture and identity at that time. The civil rights, that new democracy was perfect, that book. And that poem that I just read by the Tlamatinime, the elders, the speakers, the keepers of the word that spoke to in response to the friars, was a page in a poem that we literally memorized and thought about. So this is the way it was with this generation that I'm speaking of, that we're paying tribute to tonight, and we shall see them. And there's here we have in the library, we have the codex, the Huejotzinco Codex. And it's a little later, it's a few years beyond after 1524. And it shows the kind of a tribute, codex of tribute, of what has to be paid and what amounts to the ruler. In this case, it's a colonist. Things have changed. And they respond, they want to respond, and they want to say, you're being unfair. We have paid quite a bit. We have worked hard, and we don't think it's right, and we're going to sue you. The suing people was possible now. So the suit went forward. I'm speaking about the social response, how we all can respond, and how we all have responded. And I think the work that we have here in the library are responses to reality, responses to our visions, responses to our creativity in our hearts. I'm going to move on to kind of a more personal story, the story of my father, who comes much later to the United States. And he arrives in the late 1800s. My father was born in 1882. And this is him standing up in Denver, Colorado. He used to say, "Juanito, it was so cold. I was 14. I jumped the train from Chihuahua, from a little ranchito. And when I got to Denver, remember I was only 14. And when I got to Denver, I jumped off the train. It was so cold that I spit and it turned to little cubes of ice, Juanito." And my mother used photographs to tell me stories. And this is one of the photographs that she used in her album. one of those Crest or Woolworths albums of the 50s. And she showed me the photograph and she say, "This is your father, Juan, and he's in Denver, and this is 1904, and this is his friend Jose Barrera, and you see how he writes on the sides of the photograph?" "Yes, Mama." And he writes, and you know he learned how to speak English. Guess how he learned? How, Mama? He learned English by buying a word for a penny, each word in English for a penny. ¿A penny? ¿A penny? Sí, Juanito. So that's how my father learned how to speak English, by buying words for a penny when he worked very hard as a cowboy, as a ranch hand in Wyoming and up north in Denver, Colorado also, and his friend. And he liked to write and he liked to read and he worked very hard and he invented everything. If his shoes fell apart, he picked up pieces of leather and hammered new leather on that shoe and he could walk really cool. And if we didn't have a house, he found some wood and built it on top of a beat-up old car. And my mother would say, "What are you doing?" He says, "You see that thing right there?" "What? That beat-up old car?" "Yeah." "Why?" "I'm going to build a house." "On that?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because we're going to travel." "Where?" "We're going to go to Ramona." "Why?" "Because they have the best water in the whole world." Like Don Quixote? That was my father. My mother came to Juarez after the Mexican Revolution. And it was a small town, and who knows? You know, she came from the poorest barrio in Mexico, at Tepito, in around 1918. And the revolution had rumbled everything up, changed everything up, energized everybody. Everybody wanted to move and go places. Things were falling apart and things were being recreated. Like a living poem earthquake had hit Mexico. So she came up north with my grandmother Juanita and my aunt Aurelia to Juarez to follow the dream and follow my uncles, Vicente, Eugenio, and Chente, and Roberto, to El Paso, Texas, to La Frontera, to the new experience of the new life. Right after Pancho Villa had passed through there, actually, and that was a good example, you know. Just get going and hop on a horse. In this case, my mother and grandmother hopped on a train. Anthony Quinn had already been there, by the way. Anthony Quinn left Mexico City with his mom around 1912 and hit Juarez also, which is interesting. Pancho Villa, Anthony Quinn, and my mom. So I feel kind of good about that, you know? I feel really good. It's a really interesting mix. It's a really good blend. And my mother, you know, was spunky. You know, my mother was spunky. And she wanted to be a dancer. She always did rhymes and poetry while we were having dinner or tortillas. And in the middle of everything, she would say, "Eran las 11 de la noche." It was at 5 in the afternoon. She would quote some really deep poem. It was 5 in the afternoon. A las 5 de la noche. A las 5 de la tarde. And then she would sit down. "Can you pass a tortilla, Juanito?" She was very dramatic. My mom was totally dramatic. Everything was like drama. Nothing was, you know, even like that. It was dramatic. And she wanted to be a dancer and singer, and but you know the roles that were very strict. So she was kind of kept back from following her dream as an actress and as a singer and a dancer. And of course, those theaters were street theaters and burlesque theaters. And my grandmother had a cobalt iron hand and kept her back, but didn't keep her dream back. And she gave me her dream. And that's how I started at home. And that dream was also picked up by the women of Juarez, very young, 16-year-old, that I have spoken to, who are in their, one of them is still living, she's around 99, and Cuca Aguirre, and with her sister Cuca, with Eva Aguirre, and their cousin Elvira Macias, and they formed a group called Las Tres Chatitas, Las Tres Chatitas. And it was great to meet them in El Paso. I went to El Paso. We found each other in the web because I had spoken about at the radio theater of the 30s that my uncle belonged to, XCJ, XCJ. And all this, pours into to me into becoming a poet. The inspiration of my mother, the hard stories of women in the 30s that were kept back, and how they tore away and broke away and joined the radio shows like Cuca, like Eva, like Elvira, and became great singers, and became great songwriters, and became great dancers, and traveled throughout Texas with chaperones. So this is Cuca and Eva and Elvira as teenagers. And they were famous all over El Paso, all over Texas. And their only album was locked up in a vault and never released. So that's why I want you to meet them, because let us release their story. You want to do that? Let us release their story. And Cuca, the one on the left, bottom left, still living, and like I said, she's in her late 90s. She's always having jokes, joking around. And, oh, you haven't called me in a long time, Juanito. It's about time, Juanito. You big laureate, you. What could I do? What could I say? I said, yes, dear Cuca. I call her Aunt Cuca. Yes, dear Cuca. How are you doing? And then we have a conversation. And my uncle was part of the same group. And in those days, poets and singers could publish in a small little insert in a newspaper of El Continental, the continental newspaper of Juarez, which we talked about, where Pancho Villa crossed through, and Anthony Quinn and my mother and family stayed for a while. So here you see my uncle performing with Cuca when she's 16, and you see my uncle looking really flashy up there, Roberto Quintana, who was a poet. And I didn't know that until I found this piece of paper in Cuca's archives, which burnt down a few weeks ago. Her house burnt down to a crisp. And all her archives and photos and everything, songs, went up in smoke. So that's why we're celebrating her again tonight. Yes, indeed. So here's a little bit of my uncle's poem, which was one of the few poems we find from the 30s of Mexicanos on the border of Juarez and El Paso. I think that's the only poem that we have available of that era in this group of artists. And he used this voice of a working class worker, a working class kind of a person that was moved and pushed around and directed by the big patron, the big patron. So in the big boss. So in this poem, he writes in the voice of the man from the pueblo, the worker, pueblo worker, regarding el patron. I want to read a part of it to give you an idea, a little bit in Spanish, a little bit in English. And I'm going to use that voice. It's called Charlas Callejeras, Street Conversations, which is a cool title. So in fact, Split Rock, I want you to use that title, okay, and create a nice little rap out of it, okay? Street Conversations. And this is told in the voice of Pablo el Ranchero, Pablo the rancher man. Te digo que en esos tiempos, I'm telling you that in those days, el patrón me procuraba. The boss used to look after me. Y quería y me quería, and kind of liked me. Los domingos me daba mi maicito. On Sundays, he would give me a little bit of corn. Y otras veces, me daba mi dinero. And other times, he gave me my little bit of money. Me invitaba a comer en su casa. He would invite me to eat in his house. His house. His house. Y entonces me mandaba a la cocina. And then he would tell me to go to the kitchen. Donde daba orden, me sirvieran platos hondos y bastante que comer. Where they were going to give me big, deep bowls and a lot to eat. And then the poem continues. And it gets deeper, and it gets very heartfelt as it moves on. And that's the poem, and those are some of the voices of our early poets in the 30s on the borderland of Juarez, El Paso, that we have today right here for the first time. No one has seen this, no one has heard this, and I'm so happy that you can hear it and see it at least for a little while. Pioneers of flower and song, floricanto, poetry in its many forms, and perhaps in a way that we have not been exposed to. And that's what we do. That's what we do here at the Library of Congress. But this kept on, the spirit of the revolution, the spirit of the working class, the spirit of bringing out what's taking place in Mexico was taken up by the great painters that later were taken up by the poets, the ones we're going to talk about. So here are some images of those early 30s exuberant responses and feverish responses and full, all-out painted responses in big walls, not little walls, big walls by the great muralists José Clemente Orozco, Diego Rivera, as you know, and David Alfaro Siqueiros. And these particular murals were very inspiring decades later. That great new democracy of the 60s that we all wanted to be part of. Inspired by many. Martin Luther King, Dolores Huerta, the gay movement, the workers' movement, the student movement, and just the desire to bring equality for all. And the next piece, we have one of our poets, Jose Montoya, that passed away also last year. And you see him with his interesting outfit because he belonged and founded the Royal Chicano Air Force, which was a mural squadron that went throughout the Southwest painting murals. So that's the Royal Chicano Air Force. And if you're in the Air Force, you got to dress like you're in the Air Force. And behind him you see the farm workers' flag, the eagle, which he was part of. The Aztec eagle, which he was part of. That is the farm workers' movement. It all blends in. All these things blend in and become one. The indigenous origins of the first peoples of this hemisphere, their texts that had been translated into English, and then were translated into Spanish and then English, and the poetic eye and the poetic imagination of our new generations in the 60s in this case, where many of my friends and I came to be poets. And that's Jose Montoya, the great poet, the great muralist, who once again is not known at large. And yet if you go to Latino, Mexicano, Chicana communities, and you say Jose Montoya, they go, yeah, Jose Montoya. So we're saying, yeah, Jose Montoya here today too. Let's see what that land looked like when I was a kid. There's me and my mom and my father's colossal army truck. Looks like he actually built that too. That he got in El Paso at Fort Bliss. And there's my mom and holding me. I'm looking philosophically at the camera. And there's me again after planting corn with my father in a little lot in Escondido owned by La Familia Garcia. And I'm kind of upset there because there's a lot of spiders in the cornfields. And if you're just running through the cornfields, you're going to find a spider right here stuck to your cheek. And you say, hello, spider. I like to move on, okay? So that's me there, and that's how I began. My mother is a storyteller out in the open, and the cornfield, and that world at the margin of the big city, speaking Spanish only, and hearing the great stories of my parents. My father, who had many stories, and my mother, who was a storyteller and poet who liked to stand up unexpectedly. And then school days. First grade. I had a hard time in first grade. Only knowing Spanish. I didn't know what a school was, or a door was, or a classroom was. And being punished for speaking Spanish, first 10 seconds of class was a hard way to start. But my teachers also saved me a couple of years later. You know Mrs. Sampson, remember Mrs. Sampson? Yes. My third grade teacher who said, you have a beautiful voice. And that took care of it. And that's what I'm saying to you today too. I'm still saying that because she said that. You have a beautiful voice. And we say that here at the Library of Congress because it's full of beautiful voices and you have a beautiful voice. Alurista. He's from Acapulco. He's from Acapulco. He's one of my, we met in middle school. He came over to my little apartment my father had found downtown San Diego on Broadway, 11th and D Street next to Broadway, San Diego. And someone knocked on my door, my one-room apartment, our one-room apartment. And he said, I opened the door. He says, ¿Tienes papel? Do you have any paper? I go, paper? Of course I got paper. Of course I got paper. School just started. You know, you get those 500 pounds of paper, a big old binder. Of course. Okay, can I borrow some? And now freeze that frame. Because what happened was that he became a pioneer in Chicano poetry that influenced thousands a few years later after high school. But that's how we met each other, asking for paper and giving each other paper and taking them to school and hanging out and talking about many things, including Aztec history and language and symbols. And as a matter of fact, he brought out a great Aztec term called Aztlan, the land of the North Country, the Aztec land of the North Country, the origin of migration south to Mexico City. And he said, you know what that is? I go, what is that? I'm doing my homework. What is it? What are you talking about? Aztlan. I go, okay, Aztlan, and it's the Southwest, Juan. It's the Southwest. Okay. How come it's not on a map? He says, oh, come on, Juan. He says, we have to rewrite the map. Well, that's what poets do. I go, oh, a poet, huh? Okay, I got some poems. You want to listen to them? He was a little bit ahead of me. So that's Alurista, a great pioneer with a great book called Floricanto, Flower and Song, 1971, in Societal Inquicato. So now you see that big arc from 300, 400 BC to 1971. This is one of his poems. It's called We Played Cowboys. We played cowboys, not knowing nuestros charros, our singers, and their countenance, con trajes de gala, with beautiful regalia, silver embroidery on black wool, zapata road in white, campesino white, and villa in brown. Y nuestros charros, parade of sculptured gods on horses, of flowing manes, proud, erect they galloped, and we played cowboys as opposed to Indians, when ancestors of mis charros abuelos, of my grandparents, charros, Indians, indios, they were, indios fueron, de la meseta central, of that central area of Mexico, and of the humid jungles of Yucatan. Nuestros mayas, our mayas, if we must, cowboys play con bigotes, with mustaches y ojos negros. So I would listen to him read and speak and recite. I go, charros, cowboys, ojos negros. That's English. That's Spanish. That sounds good. Wow. Pyramids, Indios, Mayas, jungles. Oh, I was taking notes. So, society was our workshop. It is always our workshop. Whether we write alone or whether we write out in the open. It is not possible without social combustion, social change, and social human beings with voices and hearts and struggles and conflicts and happiness and joy and riding on horses in full regalia. Jose Antonio Burciaga also passed away. A great writer. He was a muralist too. And he painted murals at Stanford, and he wrote amazing columns about Mexican Chicano culture. He has a book called Drink Cultura. Drink Cultura. And it's hilarious, and it's deep, and it's piercing, and it's funny, and it's informative, and you can serve it like hot butter on a tortilla. But you're gonna taste that salt too. You're going to taste that salt too, and that chilito too. A great writer, a great muralist, and a keen mind who passed away. And let us remember him as well. One of my cohorts and a great mentor, Jose Antonio Burciaga, and there I'm attempting to look really cool. So I want you to remember Jose and look up his murals and see what you think about his books and his poems and stories. Let us accept all our stories and all our images and all our dreams. Gloria Anzaldúa is another great pioneer. Lesbian, Chicana, Tejana, Mexican, American, mestiza. She didn't like one designation. She opposed one designation. She said, I'm not one thing. I'm a person filled with explosive borders. I am the borderlands. And it is a wound, she says. And everybody goes, what? And she says, there is a state that we can go into. And it's a state of Coatlicue. The Coatlicue? You mean the goddess of the Aztecs? You mean the goddess that wears serpent skirts and death skulls as belts and has claw feet and stands very, very tall, made out of stone? Coatlicue? A state of Coatlicue? What on earth is that? But she was reshaping and reinvestigating that Nahuatl Mexica ancient culture which had not been interpreted by women. And her book, Mestiza Borderlands, is a great change maker, a great game changer. As you'll see in the mid-'80s. This is a piece called Cuyamaca by Gloria Saldúa. Driving down the canyon on a road gouged out of the side of a mountain, red earth and exposed roots sticking out like amputated fingers. 145 acres for sale. The Indians safely locked up in reservations or urban ghettos. Driving around the mountain, inside the car, fighting for silence. Houses stick out like pimples on the face of the mountain. At the skirt of the mountain ranges, I met a woman from a nearby extinct tribe, the Kumeyaay. Her name was Tilpu, meaning road runner. By a stream amidst the gushing water, under the olive woolly head of the mountain, I met her. Under the encina tree I sat. She emerged out of the smooth amber flesh of the manzanita in sandals of woven yucca. Skin polished bronze by the sun, she appeared with a tattoo on her arm, pricked by cactus thorns, ground charcoal rubbed on the wound. There's a forest fire on the Cuyamaca peaks, a sign, 4 parcels for sale. The Indians locked up in reservations, and Tilpu behind glass in the museum. Gloria Saldúa, great pioneer, also passed away a few years ago. So I'm glad we have a chance to say hi and to meet them and see them and hear a few of their works and notice that they were great pioneers, speaking at a time when it was difficult to speak. Many forces working against us and them, and yet they continued and forged ahead and became game changers. With words, with beautiful poetry, with art and stories, and a deep, compassionate heart. Ray Gonzalez is also from El Paso, and he knows all about Juarez. And he's a great collector of poems and a great person that puts a lot of anthologies together. And I tell Ray, you saved me in the 90s, Ray. I was going down. I wasn't publishing anything. Thank you. You know, our good friends who are editors and our good friends who are critics of literature, and they love it. And they look out for us writers. And they go, I want a poem from you. I'm putting together a book. And we cannot be poets without our editors, without our thinkers, without our people that put many hours into collecting those poems and creating a book where we have a little breath of time with our poem. Ray Gonzalez. He has many books. One recently published in Belgium, chapbook. I'm looking for Gloria Velázquez at this point, who is also a great poet. And she decided to just come on all the way out and talk about being a superwoman Chicana. She didn't hold back. She didn't hold back. I don't think any male ever said, I'm a Superman Chicano. I don't think there's any such thing. So it just came straight on out. And it was a very fun book, a very good book. And Gloria Velázquez, an excellent poet. I want to read you part of one of her poems called Days Gone By in Orange County. I mourn for those days gone by, the slim-waisted girl I once was. Dressed in beads, the bearded Chicano at my side, screaming obscenities at the crowds. Waving peace signs, drinking beer in honky-tonk bars, with Cowboy and his dogs, and the Beatles and the smell of stale muscatel. I mourn for those days gone by, Martin Luther King Jr. Nigger lovers, they shouted at us. Welfare lines and food stamps, Vietnam pouring out of the cracks, the smell of Feeney's burnt skin. The closed coffin and my mother's screams. I curse those days gone by, sitting here in my office, surrounded by mediocrity, academic pimps, Martin Luther King dead on the wall, letters from Vietnam neatly stacked on the shelf. No more stale muscatel, no more bearded Chicano, no more days gone by. I want you to meet Victor Martinez, another pioneer of flower and song. If there was ever a thinker, it was Victor. If there was ever a deep thinker, it was Victor. If there was ever someone who could write forever and never go out of the house or the room, it was Victor. I used to say, Victor, I just sent out a poem. How about you? What do you got? I'm editing my poem, Juan. But what do you got? I got 2 pages. 2 pages? I sent out like 400 pages yesterday. I'm working on the lines. I need to polish my lines. Come on, Victor, just send it out. I'm looking at the terms, Juan. It's important. Okay? I don't know about you, but I want to take my time. And sure enough, I had 1 billion typos in those poems that I published. And guess what? Victor won the National Book Award in 1996. For Parrot in the Oven, a young adult novel, and a hard-hitting young adult novel, A Parrot in the Oven. So I want you to meet Victor for a moment. He also passed away, young man. It's called Along the River from his book, Caring for a House, published by Chusma Press in San Jose in the mid-'80s. Along the river. There are sunrises where everything that pains us leaves, where one's arm and twisted on a question unravels its answer, and the fraction of a face becomes whole. There's some blossom shards of glass, opposites everywhere, yet none of them touches us. We're in a forest gummed together by light, beside a river whose currents are feathers, twittering to become wind, before the sun shreds them madly to their source. And after the seedless sowing of late afternoon shadows, when the forest moves at the speed the sun pulls, we say, this is what I am. A sky of frightened birds, an unmapped constellation of pores, morning and night, forever stroking the wheel with each hand. Sun, moon, all the rest. Lucha Corpi is also a great pioneer, founder of the Centro de Escritores Chicanos in the Bay Area with Francisco Alarcón. Lucha Corpi from Veracruz, the Atlantic coast of Mexico, and very interested in translating her work in Spanish into English and working with a translator and her own poetry. In the opening and shutting of an eye, full of magic, clocks, and old dreams, winter comes. The wind murmurs melancholy as the all's well of the night watchman who looked after my parents' house. I go back every winter, lest I forget who I am and where I come from. The rain comes down singing toward its destiny of mineral and seed. Between the hollow of an opening wing and the lowering of eyelids in repose, we learn to love, and instants, and surrenders, and between the intimate question posed by night and the dark, sweet reply given by dawn, we engender in pain a new life. Nothing is fixed or perpetual, not rain or seed, or you, or I, or our grief in this world that is bleeding because we're forever cutting paths, opening our way along unfamiliar roads, conquering the fury of oblivion, verse by verse. Winter Song by Lucha Corpi. And let's go back to Francisco Alarcón. He just lived life. He lived life. Juan Felipe, yes? Let's go have some dinner. I said, but it's 11:30. Let's go. Where are we going? Guadalajara de Noche, a great Mexican restaurant in the Mission District. I said, okay. And what are we going to do? We're going to talk poetry, Juan. What else is there? He was a great scholar. Like I said, a great pioneer of Nahuatl text and a whole new format and idiom that no one has really written about. So I'm presenting to you a pioneer that has not really been examined, given his writing corpus, what he has really provided that no one else has provided. Flower and Song pioneer. This is called Mestizo. My name is not Francisco. There is an Arab within me who prays 3 times each day. Behind my Roman nose, there is a Phoenician smiling. My eyes still see Sevilla, but my mouth is Olmec. My dark hands are Toltec. My cheekbones fierce, Chichimeca. My feet recognize no border, no rule, no code, no Lord, for this wanderer's heart, for this wanderer's heart. Let me present to you Gary Soto. You know Gary. He has many, many, many books for children, almost in every school in the nation. A great writer, also from Fresno, the capital of poetry. Of course, Fresno is everywhere. And in the mid-'70s, around the same time, Carolyn Forche put out Gathering the Tribes. It was kind of a pivotal year in some wild way. Carolyn Forche's book, wild and tense, terse, short lines, incredible, that could cut you down in 10 seconds flat. I love that book, Gathering the Tribes. And Gary Soto, who all of a sudden is writing in English. The Aztecs are in there somewhere, but they're not in the same manner. And it's not bilingual, and it's in English, and it feels good. All of a sudden, it feels good. And Gary presents that new, interesting redirection, as well as everything else that was taking place. This is called Field, from the book Elements of San Joaquin. The wind sprays pale dirt into my mouth, the small, almost invisible scars on my hands, the pores in my throat and elbows have taken in a seed of dirt of their own. After a day in the grape fields near Rolinda, a fine silt washed by sweat has settled into the lines on the wrists and palms. Already I'm becoming the valley, a soil that sprouts nothing for any of us. Everybody reads Gary Soto. Whenever I meet young people, I like Gary Soto. I love Gary Soto, Juan. I love Gary. I said, I'm glad you love Gary. I'm glad you love Gary. That's good. That's good. You know, reading those great books, young adult books, and poetry books. Raul Salinas. Raul Salinas. And here you see, this is 1973 at USC, November 13th and 14th, when we had the first Chicano Literature Conference, where we came together for the first time ever at USC. And at USC. And it was one of Alurista's ideas too, because it was called Floricanto. Once again, flower and song in Xochitl in Cuicato. This keeps on coming up and continues. Nothing really ends. And of course, here we have our great pioneers too, Tomás Ibarra Frausto, a great scholar in literature on the right, and Rolando Hinojosa Smith as well, and Tomás Rivera, a great poet and educator, and also story writer, fiction writer, innovative, pioneering trio that moved us very much so and inspired us in 1973. And also in 1973, in the same conference, we have Raul Salinas. What a guy. Raul Salinas with a swagger and a headband and tattoos and a big, deep baritone voice and great poems that kind of astonished us. We couldn't believe it. And he said he said something like this at the conference, like in this mode that you see him. And of course, you know, he came from like the barrios where we all came from, and from Texas, and he had served a number of years in Leavenworth for minor infractions that just kept on piling up. They just kept on piling up, and he was out. He was fresh out, feeling great, and he had a poem called a very popular, famous poem, where he talks about being a pachuco, being a borderlands youth with a swagger and a whole new style, called a pachuco. Early days, in the 30s, back in Cuca's days, where the Pachuco was born in Juarez and El Paso. And that's a whole other story. He said, ese loco, digan what? What them dudes are saying, that you're a, que Lucas, a non-goal-oriented being sufriendo an identity crisis. Me la rayo. These guys, you sprang from El Chuco and you boogied to U.S. naval battlegrounds. Room 1, the Pachuco is a Pachuco. Room 2, everything you ever wanted to know about a Pachuco. Room 3, the postmodern view of Pachuco-ness. And we were going, what did he say? Pachuco, room 1, that you sprang. He had a whole thing about what anthropologists were saying at that time about young Mexican Chicanos in barrios, that they were alienated, that they were non-goal oriented. So he decided to respond with his poetry. And this particular poem, Oye loco, digan what them dudes are saying, that you're a non-goal-oriented being sufriendo an identity crisis. And with that big booming voice, and his great, tasty style. We were really moved. And he also passed away, one of our great pioneers and bilingual, indigenous. He spent many years in the Indian movement and a true seeker and partner of Indian nations, the United States. And his poetry came out of that. So he kind of encompassed the entire sphere of the Chicano Mexican experience in the United States from all levels. And I'm so honored to have known him. Raul Salinas. His last book was called Indio Trails, which is a beautiful, beautiful collection. Let us go back to Jose Montoya just a little bit as we begin to close the pioneer, Floricanto pioneers, flower and song pioneers. Jose Montoya, we saw a little bit of his artwork earlier on. Jose Montoya was in the served in the Korean War. Jose Montoya was from Fowler, where I was born. Jose Montoya worked in the fields. His whole family worked in the fields. And as you know, Jose Montoya was a great muralist. I'd like you to explore his murals: art, music, song, painting, poetry, community. This is his song. This is his poem. I'm going to read a little bit of the poem that he wrote called La Jefita. La Jefita. Our dear mothers. Mi jefita, my mother. Mi jefito, my father. And of course, these are terms that we use of endearment. And he describes that his mom in the morning. A noisy chorro spill missing the basin. ¿Qué hora son, mamá? What time is it, Mom? Es tarde, mijito. It's late. Cover up your little brothers. Y yo con pena, but too sleepy. And I felt kind of ashamed, but too sleepy. Get to bed, little mother. A maternal reply mingled with the hissing of the hot planchas, those hot ironing irons. Y los frijoles de la olla and the frijoles steaming up on that big kettle, boiling musically, dando segunda, giving it a second tone. Y los ruidos nocturnos and the night sounds and the snores of the old man. Lulling sounds. Y los perros and the dogs ladrando, barking. Then the familiar hallucinations just before sleep. And my jefita, no more. But then it was time to get up. My old man had a chiflidito, a little whistle, that irritated the world to wakefulness. Arriba, cabrones, chavalos, get up there. What's the matter with you? Y todavía la pinche noche oscura. And still, that darn old dark night. Y la jefita slapping tortillas. Prieta, help with the lunches. Caliéntale agua to papá. Come on, help with the lunches. Boil up that water for your pop. A noisy drip missing the basin. What time is it, Mom? It's late, my little son. Cover up your little brothers. And I, with embarrassment, but too sleepy. Go to bed, little mother. And you have Lorna D. Cervantes, another great pioneer. Lorna also came out with poetry in English. And you know, it wasn't bilingual and it wasn't Pachuco style and it wasn't borderland style, but it had a lot of ferocity and woman power and who she was. It wasn't easy for Lorna. It wasn't easy for her. Her mother's house burned down. And her mother was in that house. And she stands up for herself. Poem for the young white man who asked me how I, an intelligent, well-read person, could believe in the war between races. 1981. She has a PhD in philosophy and aesthetics and many, many mentions and awards. In my land, there are no distinctions. The barbed wire politics of oppression have been torn down long ago. The only reminder of past battles lost or won is a slight rutting in the fertile fields. In my land, people write poems about love, full of nothing but contented childlike syllables. Everyone reads Russian short stories and weeps. There are no boundaries. There is no hunger, no complicated famine or greed. I'm not a revolutionary. I don't even like political poems. Do you think I can believe in a war between races? I can deny it. I can forget about it when I'm safe, living my own continent of harmony and home. But I'm not there. I believe in revolution. Because everywhere the crosses are burning, sharpshooting goose steppers round every corner. There are snipers in the school. I know you don't believe this. You think this is nothing but faddish exaggeration, but they're not shooting at you. That's Lorna. And the Aztec sign, the Nahuatl sign of these great pioneers of Insochitl Inquicatl, great friends that I learned so much from, great influences on me as we swaggered through the cities and drove together on VW buses and organized little readings and big readings and spent hours upon hours in cafes in North Beach and midnight restaurants at Donut Land on 20th and Mission with coffee and donuts, talking about Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Lorca, Neruda, and Vallejo, and thinking about the plan to go to Mexico City and organize a nationwide exchange with poets of both nations in Xochitl, in Cuicatl. Everybody a seashore, a memory that once lost and found. We all together, fireflies in the night, dreaming up the cosmos. Thank you. Thank you. I want to introduce to you, as I look for the poem, if I may be so bold, The New Pioneers. I want to introduce to you the new pioneers of flower and song that I met on the road. And when I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I was going to give a reading. It was full. And before I was up, there were poets reading. And I saw this young poet, and she was reading, and she seemed so natural and alive. And she read, and then she got down, and I said, "What's your name?" That was great. "Oh, my name? Sarita Sol Gonzalez." So, "Oh, I have my own book." And then I went to San Diego, teachers' dual language conference. And I was talking after the conference with some friends after the sessions. And it was a young girl, 12 years old. And she was telling her grandma, she said, "Grandma, yes? You know, I'm getting A pluses. I know you are. You're doing great. Yeah, but I'm not being challenged enough, Grandma. And I'm kind of a little nervous. Why? Because I want to go to the university and I want to be totally prepared. Totally prepared. I said, what is that? And then earlier I had heard her, I asked her, do you write? She goes, yeah, I write poetry. Oh, and what do you write about? Oh, I wrote a poem for my grandfather who passed away recently. I said, is there somehow that you can recite it to me? She goes, sure. And then she recited her poem to her grandfather. It was a beautiful poem. I said, that's very kind of you. That's most important. And then I noticed that she had read about, not only was it a homage to her grandfather, but it was about impermanence, that we're not immortal. And I said to myself, that's a deep, powerful, wise, insightful, beautiful poem with a lot of heart. So let us invite and bring up to the stage Elena Medina and Sara Solita Gonzalez. Welcome. Hi, Elena. I'm going to read along with you, okay?
Okay.
Because I'm so organized that I decided to make my paper disappear. Is that okay?
Fine.
Thank you. So we're going to read. Why don't you read your poems first, Sarita? Okay.
Of course.
And then Elena, why don't you read your poems as well? So you can go first. Is that okay?
That's fine.
And then you can go second. And then I'll come back and say hello, and we'll read the poem we all wrote together.
This poem is called Remember. I remember my last life. I was a mermaid, full of magic. I remember myself, which is sometimes hard to do. I remember when I was a pachuca, always wearing a polka dot dress, high heels, and a hair bump. I remember when I was an Aztec, reading ancient codices. I remember when I was a luchador named Mariposa Loca. Crazy! I remember when I was a goddess, strong and guiding. I remember when I was a Chevy Impala with white walls. I was shiny and new. I remember when I was a daughter, with a strong poet for a dad and a beautiful singer for a mom. I remember me. Thank you. This next poem is called Mentors. I needed mentors. They're the ones that got me here. My peaceful pampo showed me that how to love and how to grieve. The magical Miss Nava taught me math, science, reading, but also ignited my passion for art. She helped me write my first poem. The marvelous Merle showed me that poetry is a feeling. Sometimes it's love, Sometimes it's hate. Sometimes it's numb. The always kind Katrina showed me that poetry is for all ages, and I am never too young to be heard. The jubilant Jessica took me under her wing. She helped me understand my role as a Chicana feminista poeta. The Burke poets taught me about community and how we can heal each other, and that's what binds us together. All people, all cultures. It's about the connection between people. It's about change, spirit and soul. Understanding ourselves and each other. My heart and my thanks go out to my mentors for the lessons, for the guidance, for making me who I am today, and making me who I will be in the future. To be true to myself, and to help others be true to the light that shines inside them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elena Medina, as you may have heard, and I'm coming from San Diego, and I have my brother here. My other brother's at home. He's too little to travel, and then my dad and my mom and my grandma, and so my grandpa, he passed away last year, and I know he's would be staying right now. Elena, the whole Chicanada is gonna be there. You better bring it. And bring victory home. So this song / poem I'm going to be singing today is called One Day. One day we'll be free, I'm proud to be under the same sun, singing a song of freedom like. One day the border will come down, and all the colors will flow and grant all a crown. One day, police brutality will be no more, and all will have equality no matter who you're fighting for. One day, we will all love each other, no matter what skin, what religion, because we're all from the same mother. One day, we will treat the environment like a human being, and all of the nature can go back to being free. And one day, when someone is shot, black and brown lives matter, and we'll stand up to the cops. One day, we'll have peace between countries, and instead of starting a war, we'll grant each other awards. And one day, we will find each other the same. Because we all have to realize we're going through sunshine and rain. One day, we will look at women so that they are not objectified, but will pay attention to who they are inside. And instead of calling them bossy, taking away the why. Because I wonder why this belief is still alive. My hair flies freely in the wind. Me being proud of the color of my skin, I inhale clean air and exhale my worries. But one word that stays inside me is that one day, this day might not come. One day, one day we'll be free. I'm proud to be under the same sun, singing songs of freedom like, whoa. Thank you.
So, another mano, another big hand. Another big hand. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, what did we do? What happened here? What happened in the next poem?
Well, we sort of did an exquisite corpse through email, and we were all in different places, all different times. It was hectic. Just saying that. And we wrote a piece, a poem together.
That's right. That's good. That's right. Way to do that. And what is it called, Elenita?
It's called The Earth is Ours, and it asks us many things.
That's right. So we did do this together, and beautiful. Thank you for coming together with this. And we're gonna, shall we share it with our good people here? Shall we share it? Shall we read it? Okay. And I'm gonna go ahead and read along with you a little bit, okay? Thank you. One, two, and three.
She speaks in a sweet, soft voice that you can only hear if you truly listen.
She asks us, do we love all of our relations, and do we listen to the stories of our ancestors?
We walk, we play in the motion of stars. All the voices come to us. We dance. But this dance is like no other.
It grabs you like an ocean current, and it moves swift like the wind. It twirls and tumbles like fire,
and keeps me grounded to the tierra. Tierra, tierra, ancient gourd, emerald warrior.
Sunlight and red turtle, tortuga, tortuga, on whose back we live.
We bow.
To new generations, may they not fall, may they blossom.
Inside our words and outside our words, the words,
The words
of
of
the
the
people.
people.
The words of the people, yes.
The voices speak to me. They tell me I'm here for a reason that will take the people in a different direction.
A direction that will build brighter futures with bridges,
Not borders.
and live the dreams we
We
can
can
only
only
imagine.
Beautiful. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Thank you, Sarita. Thank you, Lenita. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. You okay?
Thank you to all three of you. I'm Rob Casper. I'm the head of the Poetry and Literature Center. And I'd also like to take the opportunity right now to thank the families of our two young readers who traveled from Albuquerque and San Diego, respectively. Families, if you wouldn't mind standing up for us to give you a round of thanks. Before I let you all go to the reception upstairs, I want to ask you to fill out your survey, which you were handed with your program as you walked in tonight. The survey is very helpful for us here at the Library of Congress as we work to improve our programs. So if you could fill it out and leave it at the tables upstairs, or when you go up to the reception, there are some tables there too, and staff that you can give it to. It'd be really useful for us. And as you walk upstairs and go to the second floor where there's food and a Juan Felipe Herrera to sign books, we ask you to stop on the first floor. There is a mini exhibit on the library's Poet Laureate. So as you're going up the stairs, if you sort of take a little jog, you'll see it's really wonderful. And we have the curators of the exhibit there to tell you more about the materials. They're lovely people and definitely worth talking to, and the materials are great. So I hope you have a great night, and we hope to see you soon again. And again, another round for Juan Felipe and his two young poets of the future.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.